You clicked because you saw a jar of coarse salt sitting next to a bottle of laundry softener, and something in you knew those two things were never meant to be mixed. But they are. And once I show you what happens when they meet, you will never look at either bottle the same way again. Here is the claim, straight out, no dancing around it. A handful of cheap coarse salt stirred into a little laundry softener does 3 jobs at once that people are paying for in 4 separate bottles right now. It softens, it freshens, and it holds scent in a room for weeks. I learned this the hard way, standing in a plain family's washhouse in Lancaster County, watching a woman do in one bowl what my whole cabinet of sprays could not. Stay with me, because near the end I am going to hand you something I traced back to a household manual printed in 1877, a method the softener companies quietly made you forget. And the best part is, you already own everything you need. No special trip, no $40 gadget, just salt, softener, and about 10 minutes. Let me back up and tell you how I got here, because I did not believe any of it at first. For most of my life, my laundry room looked like a store shelf. I had a jug of liquid softener, a box of dryer sheets, a spray to freshen the couch, a plug-in for the hallway, and a separate gel thing for the bathroom. 5 products, 5 smells fighting each other, and a monthly bill that made me wince every time the card went through. I told myself that was just the cost of a clean home. I believed that lie for close to 30 years. Then a job took me out to farm country in southeastern Pennsylvania, and I ended up spending real time around old-order Amish and Mennonite households. Not as a tourist, as a neighbor who kept getting invited back. And the first thing that hit me was the smell of their homes. Not a chemical smell, not that heavy perfumed cloud that punches you in the face when you walk into most laundry aisles. Their houses smelled clean, the way a line-dried sheet smells clean. Soft, faint, real. So I started asking questions, and the answers kept leading me back to 2 of the cheapest things in any kitchen. Salt was one of them. Now here is the first thing that made me stop and stare. I always thought salt was for the table, and maybe for icy steps in winter. I had no idea it did anything in laundry at all. But the woman I mentioned, her name was Sarah, she kept a wide-mouthed jar of coarse salt right on the shelf above her wash basin, same as she kept it above her stove. And when I asked her why, she looked at me like I had asked why she kept water in the well. Salt, she told me, is what keeps colors from bleeding, keeps the wash water working, and carries scent without drowning a person in it. Her grandmother did it. Her grandmother's grandmother did it. And none of them ever bought a single bottle of the stuff I had 5 of at home. I did not believe her. So I went digging, and what I found in the research honestly embarrassed me for how long I had been throwing money away. Salt, plain sodium chloride, does something in water that has a real name. It softens hard water by helping to tie up the minerals that make water hard, the calcium and magnesium that fight against your soap. When those minerals are loose in your water, they grab onto your detergent and your softener and cancel a good chunk of it out. That is why people in hard water areas keep pouring in more and more softener and still feel like their towels come out stiff. They are not using too little. Their water is eating it. Add coarse salt to the mix and the water calms down. The softener you already have suddenly works the way the label always promised it would. You are not buying more. You are finally getting what you paid for. The Pennsylvania farm records I dug through, going back to the early 1900s, show plain households buying salt by the 50-pound sack, and not just for canning and curing meat. It was a laundry staple, a cleaning staple. One sack did the work that today we split across a dozen brightly colored bottles. So that is the first crack in the wall. But it opens a much bigger question. If salt was doing this much for pennies, why did every single one of us end up with a cabinet full of expensive replacements instead? Hold that thought, because the answer is not an accident. Here is what I found when I stopped looking at cleaning blogs and started looking at old catalogs and industry history. For most of human history, softening and freshening your wash was a matter of a few basic ingredients you already owned. Salt, vinegar, baking soda, a little wash soda. That was it. Those things do not spoil, do not expire in any real way, and cost almost nothing. And that, right there, is the problem, if you happen to be a company that wants a monthly check from every household in the country. You cannot build an empire on something people only need to buy once a year for $3 a sack. So starting in the 1950s and picking up speed through the 1960s and 70s, the household chemical business did something very clever. They did not just sell you a product. They sold you a habit, A different bottle for every surface, a different smell for every room, a liquid softener, and then a sheet, and then a spray, and then a booster bead you pour on top of all of it, each one solving a problem the last one did not quite finish. And the scents got louder on purpose. That heavy perfume you smell walking down the aisle is not there because it cleans better. It is there because a strong smell makes your brain believe something powerful is happening. It is theater. It trains you to associate that chemical punch with clean, so that a genuinely clean, faintly scented shirt starts to feel like it is not clean enough. That is engineered. That is a habit built into you, one wash at a time, since before I was old enough to do my own laundry. The households that never bought into any of it, the plain families I sat with, they simply never got on that treadmill. They kept doing what worked in 1877 because nobody ever convinced them to stop. And standing in Sarah's washhouse, breathing air that was clean without being loud, I realized I had been paying every single month for the privilege of forgetting something my own great-grandmother knew for free. That made me angry, but it also made me curious, because if salt was the first secret, the softener in that bowl was about to teach me the second one, and this is where it gets genuinely surprising. Everyone thinks laundry softener is only for laundry. That is the whole trick of the name. But watch what happens when you stop treating it like a laundry product and start treating it like what it actually is, which is a thick, scented coating liquid. Sarah did not only pour softener into the wash. She kept a small amount set aside and she mixed it with coarse salt into a paste, and that paste went to work all over the house. And the reason it works comes down to a bit of simple science that the salt and the softener do together. The softener carries the scent and leaves a thin, smooth film that resists dust and static. The coarse salt does two things. First, its rough grains give you gentle scrubbing power, enough to lift grime without scratching. Second, and this is the part that stunned me, salt slows down how fast the scent evaporates. It holds moisture and holds fragrance, releasing it slowly over days and weeks instead of blasting it all out in an hour like a spray does. That is the whole secret behind why a spray fades by lunchtime, but a salt and softener mix keeps a room smelling faintly fresh for weeks. The salt is a time-release engine. Nobody ever told me that. I had to watch a woman with an 8th grade education show me, and then go find the chemistry to explain why she was right. Stop for a second and picture your own laundry room right now, that row of half-empty bottles you keep buying because the last one never quite finished the job. That single jar of salt just quietly did the work of 3 of them, and here is the honest truth. This is only one thread from a much bigger cloth. The full collection, the complete Plain Home Field Edition, pulls it all together, the whole Plain Home Handbook built on 7 pantry staples, plus the deeper Plain Home protocols that decode hard water down to the exact mineral fix, so you finally understand why your softener was getting eaten alive in the first place. Inside you get one full system that shows how vinegar earns its shelf space at full strength, how hydrogen peroxide works as a real disinfectant, and how one dishwasher tablet cleans 6 different surfaces, plus printable checklists you can hang right by the wash basin. And you do not have to take my word for any of it tonight. Fill a glass with your tap water, stir in a spoon of that coarse salt, wash a load, and feel how much softer the towels come out with the exact same softener you already had. That free test is the whole book proving itself for pennies. The fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen, or go to the link in the description or the pinned comment. And if you live in a hard-water county, this isn't a someday thing. That mineral bill is already running against you every single wash. Now let me show you the doubt I can already hear, because I hear it every time I talk about this. So let me give you the first thing you can actually do today, because I promised you no waiting and no shopping. Take a small bowl, put in about half a cup of coarse salt, pour in just enough liquid softener to make a thick, wet paste, maybe 2 tablespoons to start. Stir it until every grain is coated and it looks like wet sand. That is it. That is the base for almost everything I am about to show you. Now let me get to the doubt I can already hear, because I hear it every time I talk about this. I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now. You are thinking this is fine for a woman on a farm with all day to fuss over bowls of salt, but you have a job or grandkids underfoot or a bad back, and you already spent good money on the sprays sitting under your sink, and you are not about to throw them out to play pioneer. I thought the very same thing. So let me talk to you specifically, because this is actually for you more than anyone. You do not need free time. You need 10 minutes, one time, and the mix works for weeks with zero effort after that, and you do not have to throw out a single thing you already own. In fact, the softener under your sink right now is the exact softener I want you to use. You are not buying anything, you are just using it in a smarter place. Here is the fastest version, for the busiest person watching. Take a small jar, an old jam jar is perfect. Fill it about 2/3 with coarse salt, pour in softener until the salt is soaked but not swimming, and give it a stir. Poke a few holes in the lid, or just leave it open on a shelf. Set that jar in your bathroom, your closet, your car, anywhere that gets stuffy. That is a scent jar that will quietly freshen the air for 2 to 3 weeks, and it cost you maybe 15 cents of salt and a splash of a bottle you already had. Compare that to the plug-in that runs your electric bill up and needs a new refill every couple of weeks at $4 or $5 a pop. Over a year, that one swap alone saves most households somewhere between $60 and $100, and there is no cloud of chemicals hanging in the air where your grandchildren breathe and your dog sleeps. That was the part that got me. My old plug-ins were running 24 hours a day, right at nose level for a toddler. Now, if you want to actually clean with it, not just scent the air, take that paste I showed you and put a little on a damp cloth. It cuts through the grease film on top of your stove. It lifts soap scum off a shower door. It wipes down a trash can and leaves it smelling soft instead of sour. The salt scrubs, the softener leaves the shine and the scent, and you just replaced 3 separate spray bottles with one bowl that cost you almost nothing. That is the shortcut for the skeptics. 1 jar, 1 paste, 10 minutes, and you have already beaten half your cabinet. But I promised you something older and stranger, something I traced back to a printed manual, and that is where we are going now. While I was digging through old household guides, I kept running into references to something the old books called a scent stone, or in some records a sweetening jar. And the clearest description I found was in a household management manual printed in 1877, the kind of thick book a young wife was given when she set up her first home. Long before anyone could buy a plug-in, before there was such a thing as a spray can, people needed a way to keep a room smelling clean through a long shut-up winter. And what they made was, in its bones, exactly the salt and softener trick, just built from what they had. They would take coarse salt and soak it with whatever gave a gentle, lasting scent, and they discovered that the salt held that scent far longer than a simple sachet of dried herbs ever could. The salt was the keeper. The plain communities carried that knowledge straight through, unbroken, while the rest of the country traded it for a shelf of aerosol cans and forgot it ever existed. So here is the finale. Here is the version Sarah made that made me stop mid-sentence and ask her to slow down so I could watch again. This is the one I want you to make this weekend. You take 1 cup of coarse salt, you add about a 1/4 cup of liquid softener, the scent you love best. Then, and this is the piece almost nobody remembers, you add 1 packet of plain unflavored gelatin that you have dissolved in a 1/4 cup of hot water. You stir it all together and pour it into a small open jar. As it cools, the gelatin sets the whole thing into a soft, moist gel with the salt suspended right through it. And that gel does not fade in a day like a spray. It does not need electricity like a plug-in. The salt holds the moisture, the gelatin slows the release even further, and the softener scent seeps out gently, evenly, for 4 to 6 weeks from a single jar. When it finally dries out, you pour a little more hot water on top, and it comes right back to life. Think about that. The old manual describes almost exactly this, holding scent through a whole season with salt as the anchor. 1 jar, pennies to make, no chemicals sprayed into the air your family breathes, a scent that lasts a month and a half and can be revived instead of thrown away. That is what people were quietly told to replace with a plastic gadget and a subscription of refills. That is the knowledge that got buried, not because it stopped working, but because it worked too well and cost too little for anyone to profit from it. I made my first jar of that gel on a Sunday afternoon with salt from my pantry and the same softener I already owned. I set it in my hallway. 3 days later, my daughter walked in and asked what I had cleaned, because the whole house smelled fresh. I had not cleaned anything. It was 1 little jar, doing the work of the plug-in I had unplugged for good. So let me leave you with the thing that really matters here, and it is not the recipe. For 30 years, I believed a clean, good-smelling home was something I had to keep buying, over and over, bottle after bottle, forever. It was not. It never was. That belief was sold to me on purpose, and the moment I saw a woman in a plain dress do it all from a jar of salt, I got a piece of my own home back. If you are the kind of person who has always suspected that the simple, honest way of doing things got quietly shoved aside so somebody else could sell you the complicated version, then you already understand what this really is. It is not a cleaning tip. It is something taken from your grandmother's kitchen, handed back to you. So tell me one thing down in the comments. Which are you going to make first? The quick scent jar for a stuffy room, or the gelatin gel from that 1877 method? And if you can, say what scent of softener you already have under your sink, because I am curious which ones hold the longest, and I want us to compare. Type it out, I read them. And if you want to keep recovering the things that were quietly taken from all of us, stay with me here, because you are part of a growing group of people digging these old methods back up one at a time. Next, I am going to show you what happens when you put a single spoonful of that same coarse salt into your dishwater, and why the plain households I visited would never, ever wash a cast iron pan without it. You are going to want to see that one. Before you go, if this video helped, there's a deeper version waiting for our members. You can ask me your own question and a real person answers, and you'll be among thousands of folks just like you. Point your phone's camera at the code on screen. It takes less than a minute, and you can cancel anytime, no risk. Now, if your white clothes have gone dull or yellow, I want to show you something even simpler. Just 2 little tablets in the wash, and they come out snow white, no harsh bleach needed. It's starting right here.